please hit that like and subscribe button as we get to winners and losers of the SEC. So as we look back over the weekend, should I take Texas A&M just out of the equation because they are the biggest losers of the SEC?
I don't want to take them out of the equation. I want to talk about them. I love it. I
It's
love it.
it really is not even close. They are the biggest even if Tennessee had lost on the road against Pitt, still to lose to Appy State at home is in a whole different ballpark. They're the biggest losers of the SEC. Your thoughts?
They're definitely the biggest losers of the SEC. And not only is it because they lost to App State, and I get it, App State's not a bad program. Granted, North Carolina was able to beat them and put up just ungodly amount of points. So for Texas A&M to be so bad that they only put up 14 points against App State, first of all, that's not great news. But second of all, they are unrealistic with their expectations. You have Alabama fans who expect to go to the playoffs because they've been there. Texas A&M thinks that they are a national contender, and they're not. They're just not. They're completely unrealistic. And they had this yell leader thing that's going around now on Twitter where they just dogged App State before the game. And I guess it's some traditional thing that they do with every school. But now that's come out and it just looks awful. And they paid App State $1.5 million. And App State's trolling them on Twitter going, thanks for the 1.5 mil. Like,
Yeah.
you couldn't be a bigger loser than Texas A&M. You just couldn't.
So who's the second biggest loser before we get to the winners of the weekend? This might sit unpopular with you, but I'm actually going to go with Alabama, even though they pulled out the win. And here's why. I just didn't expect a sloppy game out of a veteran group coached by Nick Saban. And based off what Chris Landry said earlier, I rely on him a lot. And he still thinks that the offensive line maybe is affected by being too pass happy. But the thing he said that really stood out to me, the receivers were struggling to get open. Last year, barring injury, before injury, they had the two best receivers in the nation, and it wasn't even close. So when I hear things like that, it makes me wonder if they can top Georgia, which we all think that's going to be the eventual matchup. But man, all of those penalties, Amanda, to break that record under Nick Saban with 12 minutes left in the game. I don't want to overstate it, but if I'm an Alabama fan on September 12th, I'm a lot closer to very concerned than everything will be okay. Because the standard is to win a championship. It's not to win 10 or 11 games.
Well, yes, but that's for people to think that that should be the standard every season, and it is at Alabama, and it's because Nick Saban spoiled the crap out of everybody. But that's if you don't make it to the national championship, that shouldn't be like the end of college football as we know it. This is an unheard of era, with Nick Saban, and it's not one that doesn't feel too bad from an Alabama fan's perspective. However, there's nothing for them to fear, really, nothing. They're bringing back two of their wide receivers who have been absent since preseason because of injuries. They're both coming back next weekend. So that's a possible answer to a question of, drop balls and all that stuff. It just looked like a sloppy game. And if you watch Alabama football every year, there is a game that it all comes to a head. Like it starts looking bad and it slowly goes downhill. And then there's one game where they lose and then they pick up and go back on. Maybe this is the wake-up call that they needed, and it's early in the season. So quite possibly this is, everything will be fine after this.
Winners and losers in the SEC. I'm not going to knock Florida for losing to Kentucky because I think Kentucky's really good. As Amanda pointed out, we don't really know how good Utah is. So, who Florida beat the week before. So, I look at or Utah State, excuse me. I look at this
No,
game,
you
Utah, excuse me. So I look at the Kentucky Florida game. I don't know if there's a big winner or a big loser here. This game kind of played out the way I thought it would. As far as some other games, I really think the big winner out of the weekend was Tennessee. I mean, to be able to survive and on the road against a ranked team, I think that is your big winner in the SEC. Now, I'm not saying it was perfect, and I know a lot of people wanted it to be a blowout and were excited about that, and that probably should have happened, but Tennessee made a lot of mistakes and got out of there with the victory, and I just think there's something to be said for that, much like you referred to Alabama. I think there's something to be said for winning a game ugly early in the game. A lot of times it pulls you together, and that could happen for Tennessee. It could happen for Alabama.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a big difference in winning, and I think you mean winning the game early in the season, like an ugly game early in the season.
Right.
So, I'm gonna go back a little bit with the winners and losers. I would not put Alabama in the losers bracket because I don't see how you put somebody who wins a game in a losers bracket. It doesn't matter the expectations, and like we've talked about, preseason rankings mean absolutely nothing. Not that they're not talented and not that everyone's not expecting them to win, this season, but it means absolutely nothing. So if you win the game, you're never gonna be put in the loser's position just from where I'm coming from. Now, Florida, I would definitely put in the loser's position, and I would put them or South Carolina tied at 2 of, like, the greatest loser in the SEC this weekend, and that's because they have been exposed, like, exposed. They can't stop anybody. Their defense can't stop the run. They, are very suspect on coverage as far as, downfield play. Their quarterback is not a quarterback. He's an athlete. He's a great athlete. He's fast. He's everything that you looked for in like a Johnny Manziel type, except he's not as good. He can't hit anybody. He can't throw. He doesn't make great decisions. I'm not trying to burn on the kid, but it's the NIL now. So you're a professional athlete. So, yes, as far as the quarterback position is concerned, I think the rumors before the season started with, is Anthony Richardson the guy? Is Billy Napier really behind him? No, he's not the guy.
I think that both of our picks, to some extent, reveal our expectations of the teams going in. You were higher on South Carolina than I was, so I really wasn't
Mhm.
surprised to see Arkansas handle them the way they did because I just wasn't as high on South Carolina before the
I
season.
was just I was low on Arkansas. I wasn't necessarily high on South Carolina. I was just low on Arkansas. I didn't think Arkansas really had it.
Yeah, that they're just gonna be a physical team that people aren't gonna like to play, and I think that tests your mettle pretty quickly in a game. And the reason I put Alabama in there as a loser, even though they won, is I look at Alabama's roster and I see one of the top 2 rosters in the nation. I look at Nick Saban and I think a guy whose team's not gonna make a lot of mistakes. So did they win the game? Absolutely, and kudos to them for showing the moxie to get through it. I don't mean it to sound like I'm throwing shade their way, but I come away from it
That's fine.
I come away from it thinking that team is not nearly as good as I thought they were. Now, in a month, we could be having a totally different conversation, but that's why winners and losers from the weekend, I would say Alabama even in a win, which I rarely do, and it's the way they is it was the way they barely won, which stood out to me. But again, they could completely bounce back and win a national title. It wouldn't stun me at all. I don't pick Georgia as necessarily a winner of the weekend because they're just darn good and they weren't playing anybody.
But
And
they only won by I mean, I'm not saying they only won by 33. But when you look at what they did against Oregon, you automatically think they're coming out and putting, 60 points on the board against a no name. I can't even remember who they played. Samford, yes, Samford, who I don't even know if you can find a picture of their quarterback. But you're seeing Samford and you're going, okay, 65 points on the board, and they only put up 33. So it was surprising to me, and I don't think anybody, except if you're a diehard Georgia fan, watched that game.
No,
No.
no, definitely not. Winners and losers of the SEC, a Monday staple that we'll have here on Off the Hook Sports with Amanda LaFratta. I'm Dave Hooker. Please hit that subscribe and like button. Turn your notifications on so we can bring you more content that we believe that you will enjoy. Biles Automotive Group will give you an enjoyable car or a very functional one, depending on what you need. They have a great selection there on Callahan Drive. Biles Automotive Group is absolutely unbelievable because they know that your business is the key and they want to make sure you're happy. So, Biles Automotive Group on Callahan. And if you're already making plans for the weekend, depending on when you're watching this, I would highly encourage you to go to Big Orange Phillies. Big Orange Phillies, they're on Maynardville Pike, is in North Knoxville. It's easy to get to from the Halls and Powell area. And if you're coming south, it's easy to get to if you're up there in Maynardville. So check out Big Orange Phillies. Amanda, I promised that we would get to a couple of interviews that we had over the weekend with Cooper Mays and Jacob Warren. So I want to play a couple of clips of those. I want to remind you that these are on the YouTube channel, so you can go listen to it. A couple of grand of you already have, and I appreciate that. That's why we need you to hit that like and subscribe button. So Jacob Warren and a quick one just discussed the way they came out in the first half, and that's just not who Tennessee is.
Right? Like they're up 10-0, whatever. There you go, up 17, whatever. Like this isn't us. This is not our ball. This is not how we play. So let's figure out how we can get back to that. And then we're all completely confident that once we start start clicking, start making adjustments and start just playing the right way, that we'll be just fine. And so that was kind of the message on the sideline. Like, dude, like don't get discouraged. We're literally playing the worst that we can play. And you know what I mean? Like it's 10-0, right? Like it's not out of hand yet. So obviously it's I don't know. I don't want to say nerve wracking or whatever, but just having the understanding that, yeah, man, like this is not us, and we're gonna go, and we're gonna get it right, and we're gonna like come back, right? We really weren't down that much, but just knowing we'd figure it out.
Jacob's appearance brought to you by Bassey Lawn and Garden, and then Cooper Mays talking about when a player makes a mistake, how do you handle that? And I can tell you that from visiting with Jacob, that Trayvon Flowers on the punt return that he fumbled in the fourth quarter that kept Pitt in the game was incredibly emotional. Not only was he emotional with the fact that he almost lost the game for Tennessee with that play, but he was emotional by the fact that he was able to register a sack in overtime and help get Tennessee back in the win column. So it was a little bit of both. Tennessee could have still won, talking to Jacob Warren. Tennessee could have still won had Trayvon Flowers not made that play, but Trayvon just felt a lot of emotions because he helped Tennessee bring a game back that he put in serious jeopardy. But Cooper Mays, Tennessee center, talks about players making mistakes and how you got to bounce back and what you got to do. How does this team react when somebody makes a mistake? Is how important is it to support a teammate when they make a mistake? In particular, I'm thinking of Trayvon Flowers because Jacob had made mention that he was pretty emotional after the game and was so happy to not only pull it out but make a big play. Supporting each other, how important is that?
Yeah, it's huge, honestly. I mean, we're all out there on the same team. We're all trying to get the same thing done. Nobody, I promise you, nobody goes out there on the field and thinks like, oh, I'm gonna mess this play up or whatever. You know what I'm saying? So I mean, you gotta have grace. It's a bunch of 19 to 21-year-old kids out there, making full speed decisions, and sometimes it just doesn't go your way. And let's also remind ourselves that the other team is also on scholarship. Like they were recruited as well to beat us. You know what I'm saying? Everybody gets beat every few plays, every now and again. It's gonna happen. And if it doesn't happen, then the person you're playing is probably not up to par with who you are. So just keep that in mind. Probably that's what I would say.
I would agree with that. I think fans of all schools think that their team is good and all other teams are evil. That's it's not really the case. As far as what they did defensively, how different or similar was it to what Ball State did the week before, who was really just doing their best to keep things in front of them?
Yeah, completely different. Pitt is one of those teams that I was talking about probably in previous episodes that they like their guys, they like what they do, they know their scheme, and like I said last time, they beat us with it. So you don't really you don't fix what's not broken. So they did something completely different. They ran four down, trusted their DBs to make plays, and that's probably why we threw it a little bit more instead of going to the run. But yeah, completely different is what I would say.
Cooper Mays' appearance brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning. It's all about integrity. CityHeatandAir.com. They've been in business for over 50 years, and there's a reason why, because they will take care of your HVAC unit. It is absolutely awesome, and they're not going to make you any sort of promises they don't keep. That's City Heating and Air Conditioning. So some message board bingo. Who can beat us? Message board bingo is where I look stupid, which my wife would say that's like 5 o'clock in the morning until midnight. And so we'll just leave that there. But
Wait. Who can beat us? There's no us.
who can beat me? You know
There
the
you go.
answers. So
I know the answers. I give them.
Alex Trebek. Yeah. So
Yeah. Oh, can we revisit today's tough question first so we can see how Tennessee fans are feeling?
yes, where are we on that?
Okay. So, after all the dust settled this weekend in the SEC with Florida's loss to Kentucky and Alabama barely squeaking by Texas, how do you feel about the Vols going forward? So, we had four options: awful, not great, meh, okay, very excited. Those are your four options. So, 51% of Tennessee fans feel meh, okay, but then 43% feel very excited. No one feels awful, and very few people feel not great. So, seems like opinions have changed.
I thought they would from Saturday night.
Yep.
Couple
Agreed.
of libations, a closer game than you thought, and you're ready to throw the baby out with the bathwater.
No babies. Keep your babies.
And now suddenly you're thinking maybe pull the baby out of the tub before you throw the bathwater out. So,
Okay.
again, big picture, even if you didn't watch the game, if you were in Alaska polar bear hunting, the big picture is
They're
you can't
you're
hunt.
not allowed to polar bear hunt because they're like endangered.
But
Don't do that.
if you're out hunting bald eagles, don't do that either. If you're
No,
out
please don't.
hunting, whatever, and you're lost and you're away from everything, and you come back to your screen, phone, whatever it may be, and you see that Tennessee beat a ranked opponent on the road in overtime, and you're a Tennessee fan, you should be happy. This is not a program that's at the point of a Georgia or Alabama where things are a given. As a matter of fact, those are the only two schools in the SEC where you would think things are a given, and even they're not always a given.
No, they're not always a given at all. Like, I mean, look at this past weekend, my God. They're not a given, But I was most impressed with Tennessee beating Pitt in the fashion that they beat them, and it was only in one overtime. You go on the road and you go into, an overtime, more than likely you're going to lose if you're the visiting team. I mean, that's why people try to go on the road and get out of there by a 2-point conversion or field goal or whatever to just get out during regulation.
I agree with that. Something that might surprise you, though, if people go to the YouTube channel and watch the Jacob Warren video that we had brought to you by, of course, Vassy Lawn and Garden, he thought they were going to go for two. at the end of regulation. That's
Well,
surprising.
that didn't surprise me. Most teams try to do that. We
If
saw Titans Giants last night, and Giants did that.
Well, I mean, you thought Pitt would go for 2 at the end of regulation.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
so, yeah, I thought about it at first. I was like, "Well, you're at home, but with a backup quarterback." I I didn't say it at the time, so I don't believe in hindsight 2020, but probably the better decision is to go for 2 right there.
And not if you don't trust it. I mean, if you don't trust it and Pitt didn't trust it, obviously. It's not, not going for 2. And correct me if I'm wrong, didn't Tennessee stand them up like at the goal line or like at 1 yard like 3 times or something like that? So going for 2 in that situation, it seems stupid. Tie the game. If you're Pitt, you tie the game and you take it into overtime. You're at home. Your likelihood of winning is increased.
I would
I
agree
mean,
with
that's
you
just
90
my feeling.
I would agree with you 99% of the time and probably still do, but with a backup quarterback and what Tennessee has offensively on the other side, it would be a much stronger consideration than otherwise.
Yeah, but if he can't pull it off, you lose.
You always have, though, 2 or 3 of those gotta have them plays that are near the goal line. Usually, they're saved for overtime, and you usually have 2 or 3 of those, and I would think you would have 1 that you could pull out and feel comfortable with, but maybe Matt Patty, the backup quarterback, who I love his name. It reminds me of the guy from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Maybe he didn't have a good enough knowledge base of what they could do in overtime close. I don't know. Jacob brought it up and that on the sideline they wondered aloud if they would go for 2, and I thought that was very intriguing. All right.